That evening, after an exhausting day at work, I pulled into the driveway, expecting nothing more than the usual routine of coming home, maybe having dinner, and unwinding. But as soon as I parked, something caught my eye, something small, yet unsettling. Before even stepping out of my car, my gaze drifted toward my wife's vehicle. At first glance, nothing seemed off, but then I noticed something strange on the passenger seat. Scattered across the smooth leather were thin, milky streaks, almost like remnants of evaporated droplets. My stomach tightened. These weren't there before. I was sure of it. I'm not the type to overthink things or jump to wild conclusions, but something about those faint marks felt deliberate, almost as if someone had left behind a message in a language only suspicion could translate. I stepped closer, pressing my face against the glass to get a better look. The way the droplets were spaced, too even, too precise, it wasn't just some random spill. It was intentional. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to dismiss the wave of irritation rising inside me. I like order. I like knowing exactly what's happening in my own home. And this was a sign that something, or someone, had disrupted that order. My thoughts raced as I tried to piece it together. The way the streaks seemed methodically wiped away, leaving only ghostly traces behind, it didn't feel like an accident. It felt like the work of someone trying to erase evidence, someone who knew exactly what they were doing. I stood there for a long moment, my mind flashing back over the past few weeks. Had there been any other strange signs? Any moments that didn't quite add up? My wife, Sarah, had been acting normal, or at least, I thought she had. But now, looking at those inexplicable marks, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been missing something right in front of me. Determined not to brush this off, I knew I had to dig deeper. Every little detail, no matter how small, could be a clue to a bigger picture, one I wasn't sure I was ready to face. I took a deep breath and forced myself to stay logical. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just some weird coincidence. But then again, maybe it was the first crack in a carefully constructed lie. And if that was the case, I wasn't about to let it slip through my fingers. The rest of the evening passed in a haze. I sat at the dinner table with Sarah, pretending to listen as she talked about her day. Her voice was steady, her expression unreadable. If she was hiding something, she was damn good at it. But my mind was elsewhere. Those strange droplets in her car wouldn't leave my head. The more I thought about them, the more certain I became they weren't an accident. They weren't random. Something was off. Later that night, after Sarah had gone to bed, I sat alone in the dim glow of my laptop screen, scrolling through my thoughts as if they were open tabs I couldn't close. If there was something to find, I needed more than just gut instinct. I needed proof. And I knew exactly where to start. Her car. Moving as quietly as possible, I stepped outside and slipped into the driver's seat of her car. The scent of her perfume still lingered in the air, mixed with something else, something unfamiliar. It wasn't strong, but it was there. A hint of something musky, foreign, out of place. I exhaled slowly, my fingers moving to the dashboard. I tapped the screen, bringing up the navigation history. And that's when my stomach dropped. The most recent destinations weren't her usual stops. No coffee shop. No grocery store. No work address. Instead, the screen displayed a series of routes leading to unfamiliar parts of the city. Industrial zones, back roads, places that didn't fit into her normal routine. My pulse quickened. These weren't just random detours. The paths were winding, carefully chosen to avoid main roads. Whoever had planned them had gone out of their way to be discreet. I scrolled further. There was a pattern. The same locations appeared multiple times, always at odd hours, late at night, during times when I assumed she was home, asleep next to me. Except, apparently, she wasn't. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't a misunderstanding. These were deliberate choices. And they pointed to one conclusion. Sarah was hiding something. And now, I had to find out exactly what. I powered off the screen, sat back, and let the cold realization settle in. This was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up with a gnawing pit in my stomach. The evidence was piling up, but I needed more. I couldn't confront Sarah yet, not until I knew exactly what I was accusing her of. I had to follow the route myself. After she left for work, I grabbed my keys, slid into my car, and punched in one of the strange addresses from her navigation history. The engine rumbled to life, and I pulled out of the driveway, my hands gripping the wheel a little too tight. The drive took me away from the busy parts of the city, past familiar landmarks, and deeper into unfamiliar territory. The roads became narrower, the buildings older, more industrial. It wasn't the kind of place you'd go unless you had a reason to be there. My heart pounded as I made the final turn. The address led me to a quiet, run-down street, lined with old warehouses and shuttered shops. There were no signs, no businesses that looked open, just rows of abandoned-looking buildings. And then I saw it. A small, nondescript garage tucked between two larger structures. At first glance, it looked abandoned like everything else, but as I pulled over and cut the engine, I noticed the details. The tire tracks in the dirt, the faint glow of light spilling from a high window, the unmistakable feeling that someone had been here, recently. I parked at a distance, watching, waiting. And then, as if the universe itself wanted to confirm my worst fears, I saw her. Sarah. She stepped out of a car I didn't recognize, her posture tense, her eyes darting around as if checking to see if anyone was watching. She wasn't alone. A man followed behind her, a tall, broad-shouldered figure with an air of confidence that set my blood boiling. They moved quickly, disappearing into the garage. I clenched my jaw, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Every rational part of me told me to drive away, to cool off before I did something I'd regret. But the stronger, angrier part of me, the one that had spent the past few days drowning in suspicion, told me to get out of the car and face the truth head-on. I chose the latter. I moved carefully, staying in the shadows as I approached the building. The metal door had closed behind them, but I could still hear muffled voices inside. My pulse hammered in my ears as I crept closer, pressing myself against the cold brick wall. And then, suddenly, the voices stopped. A click echoed from the other side of the door. They were locking it. A mistake. A big one. Because now, I wasn't just watching from a distance. Now, I was inside the storm. And there was no turning back. I stood there for a second, my mind racing. The metal door had clicked shut, the lock sliding into place, but that didn't stop me. If anything, it only fueled my determination. They thought they were safe inside. They thought they could lock out the truth. They were wrong. I moved around the side of the garage, my pulse hammering in my ears. The building was old, its walls worn from years of neglect, but there was one advantage: it wasn't exactly secure. I spotted a window higher up, just slightly cracked open. Not enough to climb through, but enough to hear. I took a deep breath and reached up, pressing my ear against the gap. At first, just muffled voices. Low. Conversational. Then, laughter. Sarah's laugh. The sound of it, so familiar, so intimate, sent a sharp pain through my chest. That was the same laugh she used with me. The same tone, the same warmth. But now, it was for someone else. The man spoke next, his voice deeper, cocky. I couldn't make out every word, but I didn't need to. The tone said enough. There was comfort there, familiarity. This wasn't a first-time thing. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay quiet. I wanted to kick the door in, to confront them right then and there, but I held back. If I blew up now, they'd just deny it. Make excuses. Play it off. No. I needed to catch them in the act. I needed proof. Moving carefully, I stepped back from the window and scanned the exterior. The garage had another door on the side, an old service entrance that looked like it hadn't been used in years. I tested the handle. Locked. I exhaled slowly. Fine. I circled back to the front, pressing my ear against the main door. The voices were clearer now, and then, something else. The sound of movement. Clothes shifting. A low murmur, too soft to make out. I felt my stomach turn. I didn't need to hear more. My patience snapped. I pounded on the door, my fist slamming against the metal. Sarah. My voice came out rough, angry, shaking with barely controlled rage. Silence. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, a frantic shuffle inside. Whispered voices. The sound of someone moving fast, maybe trying to fix their clothes, maybe trying to find an escape. Too late. open the damn door. More silence. Then, a hesitant voice. Sarah's. Who is it? She knew. Of course she knew. You know exactly who the hell it is. Another pause. Then, the unmistakable sound of the lock sliding open. The door cracked slightly, just enough for me to see her face. Her expression was a mixture of shock and guilt, her eyes wide. Behind her, I caught a glimpse of the man, tall, muscular, still adjusting his shirt. And just like that, everything clicked into place. Every lie. Every late night. Every excuse. She had been careful. Careful enough that I had doubted myself. But now, the truth was staring me in the face. Sarah opened her mouth as if to say something, but I didn't give her the chance. I pushed the door open, stepping inside, sealing us all in this moment of reckoning. The second I stepped inside, the air in the garage felt thick, like the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for the explosion. Sarah stumbled back, her hands slightly raised, like she thought she could calm me down before I even spoke. But there was no calming this. No smooth talking her way out of what I had just walked into. The guy behind her, her lover, stood frozen, his expression shifting from shock to something else. Not guilt. Not regret. Arrogance. Like he thought he had the upper hand. I looked at Sarah first. How long? My voice was steady, but I could feel the storm building behind it. She hesitated. That tiny pause told me everything. Listen, I can explain. Don't. I cut her off. How long? She swallowed hard, glancing toward the guy as if he had the answer. Like he could save her. I turned my gaze on him, my fists already itching to wipe that smug look off his face. He had that relaxed stance, arms crossed, one eyebrow slightly raised, like this was all just amusing to him. You gonna say something? I asked, stepping closer. Or are you just gonna stand there looking stupid? He smirked. Actually smirked. Look, man, I didn't know she was married. Sarah flinched. That was a lie. A pathetic, obvious lie. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. Right. Because meeting in a locked garage in the middle of nowhere just screams innocent mistake. Sarah finally found her voice. It's not what it looks like. I snapped my gaze back to her. Really? Because from where I'm standing, it looks pretty damn clear. She took a step toward me, her hands out like she was trying to reach me, like she still thought she had some kind of control over this. I never meant to hurt you. I let those words sink in for a second, then scoffed. Yeah. You sure as hell put in the effort. She flinched again. Good. She should feel that sting. Behind her, her lover shifted, looking between us like he was trying to decide if he should stay or bolt. Smart move, because I was about 2 seconds away from making the decision for him. Sarah's voice was small now, desperate. I was going to tell you. I didn't know how. I clenched my jaw. So instead, you locked yourself in a garage with him? More silence. I exhaled through my nose, forcing myself to stay calm. Losing it wouldn't change what had already happened. I want you to answer one question, I said, my voice low, steady. Why? Sarah's lower lip trembled. I don't know. Bullshit. But I didn't even have the energy to argue anymore. I turned toward the guy, my stare burning into him. You. Get out. He hesitated, like he was debating whether to push his luck. Then, apparently deciding he liked having his face intact, he grabbed his jacket and slipped past me without another word. The door slammed shut behind him, leaving just me and Sarah in the heavy silence. She looked like she wanted to cry. Like she wanted me to say something that would fix this. But there was nothing left to say. I took one last look around the garage, the evidence of her betrayal, the wreckage of whatever we used to be, and then I turned back to her. I hope it was worth it. And with that, I walked out. I didn't slam the door. Didn't yell. I just left. Because this was already over. Walking out of that garage should have felt like freedom. Like closure. But as I stepped into the night air, all I felt was the weight of everything crashing down on me. The drive home was a blur. My hands gripped the wheel, my mind replaying the scene over and over, dissecting every moment, every word. The look on Sarah's face. The way her lover had smirked, like I was just some fool catching up too late. I wasn't just angry. I wasn't just hurt. I was done. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my chest felt hollow, my head pounding from the sheer exhaustion of it all. I sat there for a moment, staring at the house, the place that had been ours, the life we had built. Now, it felt like nothing more than a stage for a lie. I stepped inside, the quiet of the house pressing against me. Everything looked the same, untouched, like nothing had happened. But I knew better. I didn't pack a bag. Didn't throw anything in anger. I just walked to the bedroom, grabbed my phone, and sent Sarah one text. "Don't come home tonight." Then, I turned off my phone and lay down in the dark, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the feeling of relief that never came. She tried calling. The next morning, my phone was full of missed calls, unread messages. "Please, can we talk? Let me explain. I messed up. I know I did. But please don't just shut me out." I didn't respond. She came by later that afternoon. I heard her car pull up, heard the knock on the door. I didn't answer. She knocked again. Harder this time. "Please," she called through the door, her voice thick with something. Guilt, regret, desperation, who knows? "Just let me say something." I leaned against the wall, staring at the door. I almost laughed at the irony of it. She had locked me out first. Now, it was her turn to be on the other side. The next few weeks were a slow, brutal process of untangling our lives. She cried. She begged. She swore it hadn't meant anything. I listened. But I didn't believe her. Because the thing about betrayal? It's not just about what happened. It's about every moment before it. Every time she kissed me, every time she said she loved me, every time she smiled at me while knowing damn well she was lying. You don't come back from that. So, I didn't. I filed for divorce a month later. She didn't fight it. She barely spoke when we sat across from each other, signing the final papers. I expected one last plea, one last attempt to justify what she had done. But in the end, all she said was, "I never wanted to lose you." I just nodded. "But you did." And that was it. Months passed. The anger faded. The pain dulled. Eventually, I stopped replaying the night in the garage. Stopped wondering what she was doing, who she was with. Because it didn't matter anymore. One day, I woke up, and it hit me, I was free. And that was enough. Thank you for visited my YouTube channel. Your support, likes, and comments truly inspire me to create even more engaging content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You're a part of this amazing community, and I'm thrilled to share my stories with you. See you in the next video on YouTube.